Man are a rock band from South Wales whose style is a mixture of West Coast psychedelia, progressive rock, blues and pub rock. Formed in 1968 as a reincarnation of Welsh rock harmony group a Euro unregistered trademark the Bystanders a Euro unregistered trademark unregistered trademark, Man are renowned for the extended jams in their live performances. The Bystanders, Man evolved out of the Bystanders, a successful close harmony pop group from Merthyr who played numerous club residencies in Wales, often playing several clubs a night. The Bystanders issued 8 singles, including 98.6, which featured in the 2009 film, The Boat That Rocked and, When Jessamine Goes, written by their manager Ronnie Scott and Marty Wilde under the pseudonyms of Frere Manston and Jack Geller, which was later covered by The Casuals as Jessamine, and got to number 2 in the UK chart. They also recorded sessions of cover versions for the BBC as rules restricting needle time required live performances between the records during the 1960s. Becoming regulars on the A Euro unregistered trademark Jimmy Young Show a Euro unregistered trademark The David Simmons Show, and others. When formed in 1962 the Bystanders included Owen Money, then known as Jerry Braden, but he was replaced by Vic Oakley, giving the classic lineup of Mickey Jones, Ray Williams, Jeff Jones, Clive John and Vic Oakley. By 1968 the other members wanted to change musical direction to a more psychedelic American West Coast guitar sound, so Oakley left, to be replaced by Deke Leonard. And the band changed its name to Man. Pi years, Man were initially signed to Pi Records, for whom they recorded their first 2 albums, Revelation noted for the simulated orgasm on Erotica, which received a UK ban, and 2 Ounces of Plastic with a Hole in the Middle. Whilst mixing the second album, Leonard left, and was replaced by Martin Ace from Leonardo Euro unregistered trademark's previous band, Dream. At this time, Man were recording 3 demo sessions a week for Leeds Music, including Down the Dustpipe which they taught to Status Quo. Man then toured Europe, predominantly Germany, where they supported Chicago, but on their return, were stopped as suspected terrorists, then jailed for drugs offences in Belgium. Leonard then rejoined, but Ace stayed on as a multi-instrumentalist. Shortly after, Ray Williams and Jeff Jones were fired, with Terry Williams joining on drums and Ace moving to bass. Leonard, Ace and Terry Williams having been together in Dream, this was seen by some as a takeover. A bootleg of the first gig by this lineup, October 1970 in Hamburg, was issued as To Live or to Die and was later rebootlegged by the band. Despite good reviews in Britain 2 Ounces of Plastic was more popular in Germany, so the band spent a year in Germany, where, having to play for a Euro 5 hours a night, most numbers became extended jams. United Artists years, their manager, Barry Marshall, obtained a new record contract with Andrew Lauder of United Artists Records, for whom the band recorded the eponymous Man album, which received mixed reviews. Their media break came when outperforming Soft Machine, Yes and Family at a concert in Berlin, but they continued to play on the continent. Having appeared on the United Artists sampler album, All Good Clean Fun, they undertook a tour of Switzerland, to promote the album, together with Help Yourself and Leicester band Gypsy. Your next album Do You Like It Here Now, Are You Settling In? Recorded at Rockfield Studios by Kingsley Ward, received good reviews, and the band played German TV and Iceland with Badfinger. Constant touring was creating internal pressures, and in January 1972, John left the band, to form Iorwerth Pritchard and the Neutrons with Phil Ryan and Will Yawat. The new 4-piece supported Hawkwind and Brinsley Schwartz at a charity gig at the Roundhouse on February 13, 1972, recorded and issued as Greasy Truckers Party, a limited edition double album which rapidly became a collector's item. United Artists A&R Man, Andrew Lauder, persuaded them to follow this up with a live album. Live at the Paget Rooms, Penarth was recorded on April 8, 1972. It was sold at a reduced price and only 8,000 copies were pressed, which sold out in a week, making it no one in the budget album chart. The band then tried to write a new studio album, but lacked inspiration. Martin Ace left, to form the Flying Aces with his wife George, so Mickey Jones and Terry Williams sacked Leonard, and John rejoined together with his new band members, Ryan and Youat. The new band recorded the first of Mann's 3 Peel sessions on August 29, 1972. They then recorded Be Good to Yourself at least once a day, which received good reviews. A Party on December 19, 1972, with Dave Edmunds, Help Yourself, The Flying Aces and Others, was issued as Christmas at the Patty, a double 10 inches album, which again topped the budget album chart, but on tour John fell out with Mickey Jones, and left again. The four-piece started to record Back into the Future, but felt the need for a second guitarist, so Alan Tweck Lewis joined from Wild Turkey. On June 24, 1973 they recorded the live half of this double album at Marnie unregistered trademark S Spiritual London home, the Roundhouse, backed by the Gwalior Male Choir, who had previously sung with Mann at the Oval, when they supported Frank Zappa. The album initially sold well, rising to No. 23, and again, this was tipped to be album that would make the band, but pressing was restricted by a lack of plastic during the oil crisis. The follow-up tour had Deke Leonardo unregistered trademark S Iceberg as support. During the tour, Mickey Jones and Leonard discussed a new Mann lineup, so when Ryan and Youat left to form the Neutrons in December 1973, Leonard disbanded Iceberg and rejoined Mann along with 2 former members of Help Yourself, Malcolm Morley and Ken Whaley, who had also played in Iceberg. Your next album Rhinos, Winos and Lunatics was produced by Roy Thomas Baker, noted for his work with Queen, and spent 4 weeks in the UK album chart, peaking at No. 24. In March-April 1974 Mann supported Hawkwind on the 1999 Party, a 5-week US tour. At the Los Angeles Whiskey A Go-Go on March 12, Jim Horn joined on saxophone, which was issued as a bonus disc with a reissue of the Rhinos album in 2007. The 21st April gig in Chicago was recorded for radio, and issued on CD as the 1999 Party Tour in 1997, but omits Morley from the credits, although he is on the recording. Morley left the day before recording started on the next album Slow Motion. Before the album was released, the band toured the UK and USA in Augusta-October 1974. They returned to the USA in March 1975, to promote the album by touring with REO Speedwagon and New Riders of the Purple Sage, but the tour collapsed on the first night. A new US tour, with REO Speedwagon and Blue Oyster Cult broke up 2/3 of the way through. Additional dates were arranged, but most were cancelled when Mickey Jones developed pneumonia, so the final gigs were to be at the San Francisco Winterland. These were a great success, and promoter Bill Graham paid them a bonus, and rebooked them, but Whaley had had enough, and left. Martin Ace flew out as a stand-in, and the band met and rehearsed with John Cipollino of Quicksilver Messenger Service, who played with them at Winterland, and agreed to play a UK tour. On this tour, the Roundhouse gig was recorded for commercial release, and although Buckley and Ellingham state that it is rumoured that Mickey Jones had to overdub Cipollino unregistered trademark S guitar, it was only the track Bananas on which his playing was replaced. Everything on Maximum Darkness which sounds like Cipollina is Cipollina, per Deke Leonard. Mickey Jones tribute. The album eventually reaching No. 25 in the UK album chart, and Martin Ace continued as stand-in bassist, until the end of a French tour, with Hawkwind, Gong and Magma, when he returned to the Flying Aces. MCA, the band changed label to MCA Records. Ryan rejoined on keyboards, but as no bass players they knew were available, the band had to audition for the first time in their history. Auditions went badly, until the final audition, of John Mackenzie of Global Village Trucking Company, who was immediately offered the job. They then recorded The Welsh Connection, which reached No. 40 in the UK album chart and was toured in March-April 1976 in Britain and June-July in the US. During the US tour differences arose again, and on the subsequent European tour Ryan and Mackenzie announced they would be leaving, and the rest of the band agreed to call it a day. The MCA record deal, however, was for 3 albums, but nobody was willing to contribute new material, and their attempts at covers were poor, so MCA eventually agreed to a live farewell album. All's Well That Ends Well was recorded at the Roundhouse on 11 December 13, although the final gig was in Slough on December 16, 1976. The band agreed that they would never, ever, be one of those bands who reformed in a futile attempt to recapture past glories. Interval: after the 1976 breakup, band members undertook numerous projects, often with other former members. Martin Ace Ace left Man before the Welsh connection to reform the Flying Aces with his wife George, Mickey G, Phil Ryan and Stuart Halliday. Ryan returned to Man and Halliday joined a unregistered trademark Alcatraz unregistered trademark unregistered trademark being replaced first by Dave Charles, and then Mike Gibbons. In the 1980s Ace and Mickey Jones occasionally backed Welsh Elvis impersonator, Peter Singh and the Screaming Pakistanis, and Ace also played with guitarist David Tipton with John Pugwash Weathers on drums. Mickey Jones Shortly after the breakup, Mickey Jones recorded some demos with John McKenzie, Malcolm Morley and Derek Ballard. In 1978 he formed the Mickey Jones Band, with Twek Lewis, Steve Dixon, Al McLean and Steve Girl. Lewis and Girl left, so Jones, Dixon and McLean continued as three-piece Manipulator, occasionally known as a unregistered trademark. The Aceton is a unregistered trademark, unregistered trademark. In 1981 Jones disbanded Manipulator and formed the Flying Pigs with Mick Hawksworth and Phil Little. Deke Leonard Leonard reformed Iceberg, with Lincoln Carr and Terry Williams. He still had a record contract and initially recorded with Martin Ace and Terry Williams, but needed 2 attempts to complete the album Before Your Very Eyes, a unregistered trademark, release of which was delayed for 5 years, when EMI took over United Artists. A later lineup included 2 musicians Leonard had played with in Help Yourself, Richard Treese and B.J. Cole, plus Reg Isidore. Leonard took up writing, and briefly moved to the USA, where he worked on a Walter Egan album. Leonard formed The Force with Sean Tyler, Mickey Graham and Paul Simmons. Their album Forces First also included Terry Williams and Martin Ace. The Force disbanded after Tyler suffered severe stage fright in 1982, and Leonard reformed the band as Another Iceberg. John McKenzie McKenzie initially joined Ryan and Pete Brown, before joining Steve Hillage, appearing on some tracks of the Live Herald unregistered trademark album. He then became a session backing musician, touring with Dr. John, Albert Lee, Davey Spillane, The Christians, Seal, Alison Moyet and Everything But the Girl, and recording with Bob Dylan, The Pretenders, Eurythmics, David Bowie, Mary Coughlan, Paul Brady, Moya Brennan, Andrea Corr, Damien Rice, and Wham! Phil Ryan Ryan rejoined his former Piblocto partner Pete Brown and briefly formed the Brown and Ryan Band with McKenzie, Taft Williams and Steve Jones. A second lineup of Pete Brown, Phil Ryan, Taft Williams, Dill Katz and Jeff Seepedy, known as both a unregistered trademark Pete Brown and the Intercetus, a unregistered trademark unregistered trademark and a unregistered trademark Ray Gammond and the Intercetus, a unregistered trademark unregistered trademark, recorded some tracks issued on Pete Brown a unregistered trademark's 1984 album a unregistered trademark Party in the Rain a unregistered trademark unregistered trademark. He also played a few gigs with the Flying Aces. Ryan then moved to Denmark, where his wife Bolette came from, and wrote music for films and TV. Terry Williams On the breakup of Man, Williams immediately joined Rock Pile with Dave Edmunds, Nick Lowe and Billy Bremner. They continued until 1982, issuing several successful albums and singles and touring the USA and Europe. Williams briefly worked with Meat Loaf, before receiving an offer from Dire Straits, who he was still working with, when Man reformed. The band reformed in 1983, with a lineup of Mickey Jones and Deke Leonard on guitars, Martin Ace on bass and Johnny Oe Pugwash Weathers on drums. This lineup was to stay constant until 1996, except from a short spell, when Weathers was unwell, and Rick Martinez temporarily took over. After rehearsals, Their first gig was on All Fool's Day at the Marquee Club in London, and in June they recorded Friday 13th at the Marquee, but this comprised old numbers, not new material. Not having a recording contract to promote them, albums were issued on several labels. For example, Friday 13th was also issued as Live at the Marquee and Talk About a Morning. Later that year, they played the Reading Festival, which was recorded for Tommy Vonce unregistered trademark S Friday Rock Show and released as Live at Reading 83 in 1993. In 1983, they also recorded an album of new material in Germany, but fell out with the producer, who was also the album unregistered trademark S promoter, so the album was never issued. The first studio album to be issued, The Twang Dynasty, was issued in 1992 and included the track Fast and Dangerous, which was used on trailers for Paul White's Lucia unregistered trademark S Fast Show, although the band were not paid for this. Their performance at 1994 unregistered trademark South Glastonbury Festival was issued as Live 1994, official bootleg, and in 1995 they recorded Call Down the Moon, issued on the Hypertension label, and produced by the band and Ron Sanchez, a US musician and DJ, who had long championed their cause. Weathers left in 1996, allegedly because Gentle Giant were about to reform, and was replaced by returning drummer Terry Williams, who in the interim, had served in bands such as Dire Straits. Williams recorded some tracks, later released on the Undrugged album, and then Leonard suffered a minor stroke, so the band played a few gigs as a three-piece. When Leonard returned in 1997, Williams left, to be replaced by drummer Bob Richards, formerly of the Wild Family and the Adrian Smith Band. Former keyboardist Phil Ryan returned in 1998, taking the band back to the classic five-piece lineup, which recorded a live double album at the Star Club, Oberhausen, West Germany, in March that year. Ryan played a major role in producing 2000's Endangered Species, but then had to withdraw from the band for personal reasons. Ryan was replaced by Gareth Llewellyn Thorrington, who missed the recording of Downtown Live at the Downtown Blues Club, Hamburg, in May 2001, as his flight was cancelled due to a bomb scare, but appeared on part of the Undrugged album, which had been started in 1996, and was finally issued in 2002. Undrugged has some classic covers, including Sail On, Sailor by the Beach Boys and Ray Charles's Georgia on My Mind, both lead vocals being by Mickey Jones. In 2002, Mickey Jones was diagnosed with a brain tumor and had to take time off for treatment. Jones's place was temporarily taken by his son George Jones, but when Mickey had recovered enough to rejoin, in 2004, Leonard decided to leave, again, so George became a permanent member of the band. In 2005, Mickey Jones' health deteriorated due to the reoccurrence of his brain tumor and he was replaced by Martin Ace's son Josh Ace. In 2006, the album Diamonds and Coal was released, after which Thorrington was sacked, and the band continued as a four-piece. The 40th anniversary tour in 2008 saw the return of Ryan on keyboards, giving a multi-generational lineup, with two early members, two sons of early members and Bob Richards, who had been in the band since 1997. This lineup also recorded a studio album, but before it was mixed, the band split. Josh Ace, Martin Ace and Phil Ryan recruited James Beck and René Robran to the new lineup and wiped parts of the album to replace George Jones. Bob Richards' parts were kept on as they were unable to record over them, due to the lack of a click track. This latest album, Kingdom of Noise, was finally released in June 2009. Since 2011 Man have been based in Germany, where they still perform occasionally, including autumn tours in 2012 and 2013. George Jones and Bob Richards formed a new band Son of Man, together with Richie Gallany, Marco James and Ray Jones from Welsh band Sassafras and Glenn Quinn from Tiger Tails. As of 2015 they are continuing to play Man's music at gigs around England and Wales. After leaving Man, Mickey Jones continued to perform for a while, but was then diagnosed with another tumor. He spent the next year and a half in and out of hospital. His health meant he remained at a care home in Swansea for the next 3 years until he died peacefully, at the age of 63, on March 10, 2010. Fans paid tribute to Mickey Jones online, calling Man the greatest Welsh band of all time. Clive John, also known as Clint Space, another of the founding members, died after a long fight against emphysema on August 24, 2011 in Hanover Street, Swansea, aged 66. Former bassist Ken Whaley died from lung cancer on May 8, 2013, aged 66. A new album, Reanimated Memories, was launched at a gig at the Half Moon, Putney on February 22, 2015, the band's first performance in the UK since October 2011, before its official release on February 23. In 2015, Swansea Museum are mounting an exhibition The Evolution of Man 1965 to 2014, acid rock from Wales featuring Man memorabilia from the last 50 years, from the collection of local fan, John Bannon. Discography. For a full discography see the Man Band Archive. In August 2011 this listed 412 releases, on 71 labels, in 24 countries. Band member timeline. References. Further reading, Leonard D. Rhinos, Winos and Lunatics. Northdown Publishing ISBN 1-900711-00-1 and ISBN 1-900711-00-1, Leonard D. Maybe I Should a unregistered trademark Vase Stayed in Bed? Northdown Publishing ISBN 1-900711-09-5, Leonard D. Maximum Darkness, Man on the Road to Nowhere Northdown Publishing ISBN 978-1-900711-19-7. External links, Comprehensive Fan Site, Original Fan Site, Mickey Jones Official Site, Deke Leonard Official Site, The Harvard Man Homepage, Tribute Album Download Page, Man at Discogs.com.